It was a challenge for me, man. It was tough. I got there day one practice. I'm like, why am I here, man? How did I get here? What did I do wrong at my previous school that led me to this point in time?
Welcome to the Wellness for Life podcast. I'm Hank Merrick, and
This is Harrison Barnes. Today we got a special guest, one of my former teammates at Tuskegee. We got John Saffold.
1-2, Saffold, and the pitch. This one chopped out the right field. Did it get down? Chasing it, and over the shoulder, can't get to it. It's over Garcia's head. He's at the base of the fence line now. Tuskegee sending Scott all the way around from first base. And John Saffold with a triple out to right field. He clears the bags for Tuskegee. As he shot one out to right field, Garcia gave chase. He just could not glove it. And Saffold stands at.
John, tell us a little bit about yourself, man. We're glad to have you on. It's long overdue, man.
Yeah, it's true, man. Firstly, I appreciate y'all for having me on, man. It's an honor. And boy, do I have a story to tell. But yeah, I grew up in a city called Birmingham, Alabama, and I'm currently 22 years old, and I'm a firefighter for the city of Gadsden. Um, Contrary to where I was born, I actually grew up in Center Point. It's a little town, maybe 30, 35 minutes north of Birmingham. Um, I grew up under the household of two Marines. Not only was my father in the Marine Corps, but my mom was as well. Um, so I mean, right off the bat, I was, they instilled in me discipline, leadership, and attention to detail. Everything up under the sun. Uh, I grew up playing pretty much every sport imaginable: football, basketball, baseball. Swam a little bit, played a little bit of soccer as well. Um, so I have a pretty extensive athletic background. Uh, Went to middle school, high school, and all the way through college. Played baseball pretty much my entire life, and I'm a fireman now. I love it. I love what I do. I love the guys that I work with, and I wouldn't trade them for anything in the world. Uh, so yeah, it's a little bit about me.
Definitely. So, growing up in a Marine household, I know you probably learned many valuable lessons. Like, what are some of those lessons that you learned that you still take on today?
Honestly, Harry, I'd say the number one thing would have to be attention to detail. I mean, everything from neat handwriting, making my bed every single morning, you know, uh, making sure I didn't slouch whenever I walked or whenever I sat. And I can remember a specific day. I was, I believe, maybe fifth or sixth grade, and it was first day of school, you know, and my father always told me to wear a belt, and I had a belt on, but I didn't have my belt through every single loop. I missed the loop all the way in the back. You know what happens, and he was checking me out, and he saw it, and he said, "Son, you gotta pay attention to detail." And so I had to readjust myself, and sooner or later, he sent me off to school. But yeah, I'd say attention to detail is just one of those things that's often overlooked by a lot of us, and I'm just thankful that I uh, I had a dad that paid attention to those kinds of things, because it made me the guy that I am today. So yeah, attention to detail probably have to be number one up on my list.
100%. I really agree with that. I can tell it shows anyone the day when I first met you. I could tell like he was serious, like he meant business. Like I kind of like
Yeah,
that. Like some
yeah, I get my dad, man. That's just how he is. He's about his business kind of guy, and I guess I just get it from him.
Definitely 100%. So I want to shift to sports side. You grew up playing a lot of sports. I kind of want to get into what made baseball ultimately went out for you. Go on and play it at several different schools in college. Why did
Mhm.
baseball stand out to you?
Well, growing up, man, I mean, like I said, I played pretty much every sport up under the sun. Basketball, baseball, and football were my main three sports that I played the most growing up. And I'd always been athletically inclined. My father, he played football back when he was in high school. So I can attribute pretty much everything that I have to him. But yeah, like I said, three-sport athlete growing up. Um, Started off playing, my very first sport was baseball, actually. And eventually I transitioned over into football. And eventually I transitioned over into baseball. I mean, not baseball, basketball. I enjoyed basketball. I was, like I said, athletically inclined. Um, I could dribble a little bit. I could shoot a little bit. I was just a go-getter, man, and I was just a hustler
Mhm.
at the end of the day. I can make up for a lot of things, especially talent. So, uh, didn't really enjoy basketball in my later years. So I let go of it and decided to focus on baseball and football. Um, I mean, I enjoyed the heck out of football. As a matter of fact, I went on to play for about another 2 or 3 years in high school as well. But baseball was ultimately one of those sports where I gravitated towards, man. I can't explain it, but it was just one of those things where you naturally just become talented at it. The more you work hard at it, the better you become. And so that's pretty much what my situation was with baseball. I was seeing a lot of results, a lot of progression as well. So I just kind of told my dad, I love football. I know it's the sport you grew up playing,
Yeah.
but I think I want to stick it out with baseball. Uh, I enjoyed it. It's different from football. It's not as physical, but I would say equally as competitive. You know, but baseball's a finesse sport, man. It's like I said, it's not as physical, but you still have to have good eye coordination. You still have to have quickness on your feet, good reaction time, you know, and I mean, baseball was just something that I gravitated towards. So I stuck with it, and I pretty much just cut football out completely. And I don't mean I don't regret it or anything like that, but baseball was just one of those things that just stuck with me, and I stuck with it for as long as I could. Uh, and so it carried on to my high school years. I played at Ramsey High School, downtown Birmingham. Didn't have the resources as some of the bigger schools around, but I still made the most of it. And I eventually transitioned into a new school my junior year, and I went to Bessemer Academy, smaller school, private school, Christian school. Um, but I mean, as far as their baseball program, it was a lot better than Ramsey's at the time. Uh, so I continued to work with as many people as I could. I played travel ball as well in the summertime. I worked out extensively in the wintertime as well. I played a lot of fall ball too. So I was around a lot of talent, and it just pushed me to continue to work hard, continue to be a student of the game. You know, so eventually I was blessed enough to have received a scholarship from a Division I school. Not a lot of kids could say that, but I was blessed enough to have that opportunity. So I took it and I ran with it. Uh, and like I said, I didn't completely quit on football. I played in high school. I enjoyed it, but man, is it taxing on the body, man. I can remember my second game in tackling a guy running down the sideline, and I actually sustained a tear in my labrum. And I was playing fall ball at the time too, fall baseball. And I remember waking up the next morning, man, and I could hardly move my arm. But I love baseball, so I played that next game as best I could. And yeah, man, it was just baseball is just one of those sports that stuck with me. And like I said, I I saw myself progressing. I saw the hard work that I was putting into it. I never thought twice about it. And that's one of those things that just always stuck in my head. So I always decided to stick with it, wherever I go. So baseball was my number one force. Yeah.
So I kind of want to touch on. I remember you saying your junior year of high school, you had a season-ending ankle injury, right? So like being a
Yeah. Uh-huh.
who's been affected by injuries a lot throughout his whole career. Even these past 2 seasons, I haven't been able to play a full season since my sophomore year, just dealing with injuries. I know the toll it can take on you mentally, just as an athlete. Like,
Yeah.
do I want to keep doing this? Is this really for me in the future? Like, what kind of toll does
hmm
it have on you mentally, and like, how did you grow from that injury?
I mean, it just comes with doing what you love, man. If you're doing something that you love and you have a setback like that, if it's something that you really want to do and you've made up in your mind and your heart that, okay, this is what I'm sticking with, then there's nothing that can stop you. And I took that same mentality, even after I got injured. Um, yeah, man, I can remember like it was yesterday, man. We were up in Tennessee playing on turf field, and my coach, I was on first base. My coach had given me the steal signal, and so I took off, man, and I slid and pretty much broke my ankle as I was sliding into second base. And uh, I mean, I knew my ankle was broken. Uh, I mean, it was devastating. I hated it for my team. I hated it for myself. I hated it for my coaches. Uh, but I mean, it goes back to something that my parents have always instilled in me, which is commitment. You know, if baseball is something that you love, then stick with it, regardless of the roadblocks and the potholes that you endure. So, yeah, like I said, I just applied that same mentality to it. I knew it wasn't the end of the world. I knew I had another season to look forward to. Uh, so I just went to rehab, got back 100%, uh, pushed through, did a lot of hard training, and I was able to bounce back and get back on my feet and have a pretty good uh, senior year with my team. Uh, uh, yeah, man, it's crushing. It's a crushing feeling. I mean, we've all been there. When you're giving it your all, when you're 100% balls to the wall, things will happen. You're gonna get hurt. That's just inevitable. You can't avoid it. Uh, but it's about how you bounce back. Like I said, there are going to be times where you feel like giving up. There are going to be times where you feel like you can't go on any further. There are times you're going to want to quit. Uh, but like I said, if it's something that you love and you've deep down made up in your mind that this is something that I'm going to do, and stick with it, no matter what.
How do you, I was wanting to touch a little bit on the military
Yeah.
household. How do you feel that uh, the attentions to detail crossed over to helping you on your baseball career?
hmm Uh, well, I mean, with baseball, you've got to pay attention to detail. From the moment, even before you step in between those white lines, you know, uh, you've got to make sure your jersey's tucked in. You know, you've got to make sure you've prepared in the off season. You've got to make sure you're adequately conditioned. You got to make sure you can go the distance and that you've prepared. You know what I'm saying? So that you can give your team uh, the best chance of winning. The best chance to dominate. And so, man, I've always been in the gym. I'm a huge gym guy. Uh, Ever since I was in high school, man, I've always loved to work out. It's kind of like baseball. It's one of those things that just stuck with me, and I just stuck with it. And so I've always tried to make sure that my body was prepared um, before stepping on a baseball field. Whether it's mobility, whether it's strength, speed, endurance, conditioning. I mean, the whole 9 yards. You know what I'm saying?
When
Yeah, I just try to make sure my uniform is good to go. I try to make sure I'm warmed up as best as I can. Uh,
You know,
a lot. I think a lot of things that guys overlook is preparing your teammates. Give them that talking to. Hey, guy, you're the man. Today's going to be your day. I can remember back to my early travel ball days, guys would talk to me that way, and it just kind of carried with me on my later years in baseball. I try to be that guy. When guys aren't feeling their best, I go up to them, I say, "Hey, man, today's going to be your day. Scratch whatever happened last game. Tonight's your night. You're going to be that guy that we look up to today. Uh, your time's coming." You know what I'm saying? So try to make sure my guys are feeling their best. I try to make sure that I'm feeling my best. I'm try to make sure I'm looking my best. Try to make sure that I've trained to the standard that I, hold myself to. So there are a lot of just teeny tiny details that guys overlook, and try not to be that guy.
I,
I try not to be that guy that's showing up to the field with his shirt untucked or with his hat backwards. So yeah, things of that nature. Yeah.
the reason why I asked was because baseball just seems to be that type of sport. When I think of a sport where you have to pay attention to little things, baseball just seems
Hmm.
to stick out to me like that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
comes to things, just simple things like wind direction, paying attention to that, how much wind is going to be out, where's the sun at? What's the pitcher
Yeah.
doing now? Is he standing to the left? Is he standing to the right? What
Hmm.
is his first pitch? What's he comfortable with? Does he look
Yeah.
around pitching? Is he what kind of signals do he think he's getting? How much time does he
Yeah.
take between each pitch? All of those little things seem to matter in a sport like baseball, whereas other sports it doesn't really seem to matter as much because you
Hmm.
guys are playing on such small margins. So when you hit a ball or pitch into a small area, box of space, it's such small margins that make a big difference from you being able to get a single, a double, a home run, being able to throw somebody out. Those little things just seem like they add up in baseball more than they do in other sports, in my opinion. I don't know.
Yeah. Absolutely. You're 100% correct, and I'm more than glad you brought that up. Yeah, like, as an outfielder, paying attention to where the sun is, you know, hey, telling your guys, sun's behind us, or, sun's off to the left, you might want to shade over. Uh, Paying attention to the pitcher's arm angle and relaying that to the guy so that they can pick up on it and have good at bats. Making sure that your prep step is on point with every pitch, because, ninth inning, 2 outs, up by one, bases loaded. You've got to make sure you're ready, you're on your feet at all times to make a play. Uh, so yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I definitely overlooked some of those things, but yeah, it's a sport that allow such little room for error.
Yes.
Like you said,
Yeah.
it's the margins are very small, and you try to get every bit of edge that you can get. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you've been to multiple different schools in college. I kind of want to touch on this. So we met up at Tuskegee where you were at for your last
Yeah.
year. Ultimately, I
Uh,
kind of get into that. What made you decide Tuskegee for your last stop in your baseball career?
Man, I love to play ball. That's simply what it was, man. And I was willing to go wherever and do whatever it was that I had to do in order to stay involved in the game, in order to play as long as I could, in order to receive an opportunity. So, man, I was fresh out of JUCO ball at Bishop State down in Mobile, and I was working at a gym, and I was still training, still hitting BP on my off days, still long tossing. You know how baseball players are, just trying to stay ready. Um, and I think early August had rolled around, and I wasn't quite sure where I was going to play at, and I was starting to get a little bit worried. I was starting to get a little antsy, and Tuskegee reached out to me, and they felt as if I can make an impact. And I'm extremely grateful to have received that opportunity from them. Uh, so, yeah, they were the only school that had bothered to reach out to me. That's really what it was. And like I said, I was willing to go wherever to play some baseball, man. I'm a firm believer in if you're good enough, they'll come to you. And so, I did the absolute best that I could my freshman and sophomore years playing ball, putting in the reps, putting in the time. And so, yeah, sure enough, they reached out to me. Better late than never, right? Uh, yeah, so August, I was uh, approached by them and their coaching staff. And I'm just ultimately blessed and really grateful that they believed in a guy like me. Um, so yeah, I was willing to go wherever, to play a little bit of ball. That's really all it was.
I'm glad you made that decision, man. We became really close in the 1 year we shared there. Though. We're probably one of my closer friends that year for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely, man. We hit it off from day one.
Sure. But I kind of want to touch on this. So you started off at Alabama State, which is a Division
Yep.
One school. Um,
Uh-huh.
yeah. So how did that feel making the jump? Because you did go to JUCOs and stuff, but like going from D1 to the D2 level, like how did that affect you? Because me personally, out of high school, I was supposed to go to Eastern Kentucky Division One school. And I kind of wasn't
Mhm.
open to going to D2, so I was kind of D1 or nothing. Like, did you kind of have that mindset, or
Yeah.
what kind of was going through your mind during that decision to go to a D2?
Uh, well, I was just like you, Harry. I was fresh out of high school, and my mind was stuck on Division 1 or absolutely nothing, which was uh, which was a mental mistake on my end. There are tons and tons of guys that have started off at JUCO schools and have gone pro. You know, uh, so that's where I kind of messed up mentally, uh, coming out of high school. And like I said, I received a scholarship from ASU to play ball there, and it was extremely humbling. And it was also a learning process for me. My dad, he'd always tell me, you got to be a dog amongst dogs. You know, uh, everybody's the man when you get to Division 1 baseball, or really just with any sport. You know, at high school, whatever high school you were at, you might have been that guy. But you go to a Division 1 school, hell, even D2, even D3, but specifically Division 1 schools, everybody's that guy. You can't count anyone out. Uh, so like I said, it was humbling. And truthfully, I didn't really get as many reps as I wanted. And ultimately I charged that to myself. You know, uh, like I said, everybody's the guy. Uh, everybody's good. Everybody competes. Everybody's talented. Everybody's skill set. Uh, it differs, but you get to a Division 1 school, there are going to be some dogs there. There are going to be guys that are better than you that have had collegiate reps. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, it was ultimately a learning experience that I'll forever be grateful for. Um, and so transitioning into JUCO ball was a challenge. Um, but I mean, my biggest thing, man, is you got to stay humble wherever you go. And I kind of struggled with, humility. And, I got to not Division ball, but I got to Bishop State. And I mean, those guys are some dogs. They get after it, they get it out the mud, man. You know what I'm saying? They understand that JUCO ball is essentially bottom of the barrel, so to speak, which inspires them and it pushes them to go hard. You know what I'm saying? It encourages them to, be the best that they can absolutely be each and every day and to compete at a high level. Uh, so honestly, I'd say JUCO ball was as competitive, if not more, than my experience at a Division 1 school. We had some really good guys on the team that have gone on to have good careers. Uh, I had a guy go to Jacksonville State. We had a guy go to Alabama A&M. We had a guy go to FAMU. You know what I'm saying? So it can be challenging. You may feel that you belong in a better place at a better school, at a better organization. Um, but you've just got to stay humble. You've got to be where your feet are. You've got to be in the moment. You can't just get discouraged because of where you are, because everybody starts off at a different place. You know what I'm saying? So it was a challenge for me, man. It was tough. I got there day one practice. I'm like, why am I here, man? How did I get here? What did I do wrong at my previous school that led me to this point in time? You know, and man, like it was humbling in and of itself. Those guys are some. There are some. Oh shoot, I can't talk. There's some competitors out there, man. Goodness
It's
gracious, man.
funny you mention that because, and it just brings a story to my mind about
Yeah.
Andre Agassi. I don't know if you guys remember or watch
Wow.
tennis or not. You remember Andre Agassi? He was a great tennis player, great tennis.
Mhm.
Well, he went through a rough patch in the ATP circuit, and he had some problems and things like that. He dealt with some injuries, and he had some other off the court issues. Well, his rank dropped down really low. So what a lot of players will do, he didn't have to because he had a big name at the time, but he dropped down into one of the junior circuits. And that's where a lot of people play to get their skills set up, which kind of made me think about what you were talking about. And he was a great player before he went. He told the story about what it was like when he dropped down into that circuit and how competitive it was. And he said, and he told everybody, like, look, the pro ATP tour is one thing, but I'm telling you, when you playing that junior circuit, they are hungry. He said, it's no joke down there. He said, every
Yeah.
was a fight because you got to look at it in a different way. Those guys that are on that lower level, they're playing just to be able to have money to take care of their family. They're not playing for millions of dollars and sponsors and all that. Their pressure's different. If you're sitting, your wife is in the stands and you got two little kids and you out there playing tennis, it might only be 50, 100 people in the stands.
Mhm.
But if
Yeah.
you win, you got enough money to pay your rent for the next 6 months, to eat, to
Yeah.
pay for the kids' school, So the
Yeah.
pressure on them was different. So the level of intensity that he met on that lower circuit was a lot more than he was expecting it to be.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
had fighters out of that. And by the time he finished fighting with them and got back to the ATP tour, oh man, he took off and shot off, won a couple of more majors, and was on a roll after fight with those guys on that low level who had everything to lose.
Mhm.
But those guys, even though they're not considered the top ranked players, they're coming with a different level of intensity every single match. Where you
Yeah.
can catch a match or two, in the ATP tour where you might catch a slouch or somebody slipping or whatever. But down there, nobody was slipping.
Mhm.
And on top of that, you're the biggest name down there. So they're coming for your throat because they know
Yeah.
you're ATP guy. So you drop
Yeah.
down, like, oh, we got a D1 guy.
Yeah.
So they coming for you.
Yeah.
So the amount of, it's not no drop off. The intensity actually can go up when you drop down.
Yeah.
And so you touched on that. It just reminded me of that story. It just resonated, that in different sports, you drop down to G League, it's not necessarily no break. Like, you know what I'm saying? So sometimes you could take a step backwards, but you're really going to wind up taking 2 steps forward.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up because, yeah, even though JUCO baseball isn't top tier level baseball, guys are still hungry.
Yeah.
Like you said, they've got families to feed, maybe.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like a guy like me coming in, okay, yeah, we're gunning for his head.
Yeah.
He may think he's better than us, but hey, we're gonna let him know something. You know what I'm saying? So guys are hungry. They're bringing their best stuff every single practice, every single game, every single series.
Mm-hmm.
So at Tuskegee, you're a really good teammate. I always could go to you when I was like when I needed advice on my swing, what I'm doing right, what am I seeing? You had a different eye. You're like another coach, if you will. So like when you weren't playing, you still were really involved in the game, and I really do appreciate that. And you ultimately
Yeah.
won the most valuable teammate award. So like, what does being a good teammate? What does that mean to you?
It's an honor. Um, I didn't come in the fall. You know, I was I pretty much just I went to UAB in the fall as just a normal student. I wasn't playing any baseball, I wasn't playing any sports. I was a kinesiology major and just kind of waiting my turn and training as much as I could. And for a guy like me to have not even been with the guys a full year, only half a year, I mean, it was incredible. Like I said, I'm grateful that all of my teammates looked up to me. Um, no one knew who I was when I stepped foot into those batting cages the first day, but they could tell, okay, this guy means business, and he's a guy that we can latch onto for help when needed. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, it was incredible, man. It was an honor. I was extremely thankful. And I mean, like I said, I was just even just a spring semester, you know. Oh, this guy hadn't been with us a full year, but here he is in the starting lineup, encouraging us, making big plays, making big swings, you know. And so I think that's just a different side of baseball that people don't get to see. They see the home runs, they see the big plays, they see the late inning strikeouts, you know what I'm saying? They see the ball player that you are, but what kind of teammate are you? Are you picking your guys up? Are you encouraging? Are you encouraging them? Are you being that shoulder to lean on? You know what I'm saying? Are you saying, hey man, I know today was rough for you at the plate. Let's go to the batting cages tonight or tomorrow and get some swings in. You know what I'm saying? So always try to be that guy. You know what I'm saying? Like whenever a guy was struggling, I'd come up to him and say, look, man, I know you're struggling, but hey, you got my contact information. Hey, let me know whenever you want to get some work in. You know what I'm saying? Uh, whenever they'd have a bad game, I'd say, look, man, today is just leave today in the past. We've got tomorrow to look forward to. We've got a whole another series, another 2 games, another 3 games to look forward to. So yeah, man, it was incredible. It was an honor. Like I said, I'm grateful to each and every one of those guys, including you, Gary, that nominated me for best teammate of the year. It was something special, man. And I mean, I still have that trophy up in my room right now. I'll never get rid of it. I mean, it was special, man. I'm extremely grateful.
It's underrated how important being a great teammate is by regular people who are just sitting there in the stands, but it's not underrated to other athletes.
Mhm.
And it's
Yeah.
also not underrated to professional sports teams because the owners and managers will keep a player on a roster and pay them millions of dollars just to do that.
Yeah.
They're not even playing at all. They're just sitting on the bench, but their job is to keep everybody else
Keep
spirits
morale.
up, keep everybody else on point, and keep their locker room in order.
Mhm.
And they're being paid just for that. So professional sports teams understand the value of having a person like that on their bench in their locker room.
I was, I'm extremely thankful to those guys that they didn't think of me as, they thought of me as one of them, even though I only came in for half a semester, okay, yeah, this guy's with us now. He's one of us. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, it was an extremely rewarding feeling. And like you said, it is an underrated part of the game that a lot of people don't see and a lot of people don't recognize. You've got to be just as good as a teammate as you are a ball player. You can't have one without the other. You can be a great ball player, but a terrible teammate. And the same, it's reversible. You can be a great teammate, but a terrible ball player. So I tried to be the best that I could be on the field and off the field.
And you know, a lot of players who are bad teammates, they bounce around from team to team,
Yeah.
and you don't know why. They can play, but they on
Yeah.
another team. Next year, you're like, what
Yeah.
you playing like he good. Like, that's what it's right. All right, so I'm gonna move the needle a little bit. There's been a lot of controversy with a lot of the political things that are going on that negatively affect people of color. And athletes have been encouraging, or politicians and other people, leaders, have been encouraging
Can you
athletes.
speak up a little bit?
They've been encouraging not to attend SEC schools, Southern schools, because of the recent politics and things that are going on. And then you have people who believe, don't listen to the athletes, they don't have nothing to say, they're not politicians, just let them play sports, they shouldn't have a voice really, they don't represent us, they're just on their own thing. Do you feel that you could possibly, or should athletes articulate themselves and speak up for the very greater good of other people? Or do you kind of subscribe to the shut up and dribble type thing? Talked about LeBron James, shut up and dribble. Don't get involved in helping or talking about things that are going to, uplift communities or might be controversial in some ways. How do you feel about that?
Uh, um, I think as long as it's constructive to talk about, and as long as it's relevant, I think athletes should uh, voice their opinions, especially if it's a big concern or if it can negatively affect athletes uh, that currently play the sport and are becoming SEC athletes or just athletes in general. Uh, I'm not aware of the SEC politics. Unfortunately, I haven't really been reading up on any of it. But yeah, like I said, I mean, as long as it's constructive, and I think an athlete should 100% be allowed to voice their opinions on something if they feel uh, a certain way about a certain thing or a certain situation. Uh, yeah, I mean, athletes play the sport at the end of the day, you know. So I think their opinion matters, their voice matters, um, and you can't just shut that out. You know what I mean? They are what makes the sport entertaining. You know what I'm saying? They're the ones playing the game. They're the ones doing the dribbling, the running, the jumping. Whatever the case may be. So as long as it's relevant and constructive and positive, then absolutely 100%.
So many of us as athletes, I feel we get wrapped up in the title of just being just strictly an athlete. That's kind of our identity. We kind of carry that along. And
Yeah.
after sports, like how have you been able to handle like kind of losing that title, just going about life and just being John? Like how have you gone about doing that?
Well, I had a head coach at Bishop State, and Coach Hattenstein. I'll forever love him. Greatest coach ever. He always told us, uh, specifically, I'll use baseball as an example. Baseball is what we play, but it isn't who we are. You can play a sport, but like you said, we can become so wrapped up in it and let it define us and let it become our identity. Um, when that shouldn't be the case. We're humans at the end of the day. We're people. Baseball is just something that I do. It's not who I am, you know. And for a long time I struggled with disassociating myself from the game. Whenever someone would introduce themselves to me, I'd say, hey, my name is John Saffold. I'm a baseball player at such and such. That'd be the first thing I say, honestly. But like I said, sports is just a small fraction of our life. And while it is something that you should take pride in, you should be proud of the sport you play. You should be proud of everything that you've earned within the sport, everything that you've accomplished. There's a life outside of baseball. There's a life outside of sports. You know, we won't play sports forever. No one can be an athlete their entire lives. And there will come a point in time, if there's somebody watching this that is a high school or, you know, collegiate or even professional athlete that's watching this, there will come a point in time where your career will come to an end. And I mean, essentially, you just have to leave it out all on the field. You know what I mean? And you have to be okay with waking up every morning and saying, okay, I gave it 110%. I left it all on the field. I gave it everything I got. I did the absolute best I could. And so live every single day, like every single practice that you attend, every single game that you have, give 110%. That way, when you do wake up for a regular 9 to 5 job or whatever the heck it is that you do, you can go to sleep and say, yeah, back then I gave it everything that I had. I laid it all on the line, and yeah, man, being a fireman, it's competitive in and of itself. It's a really competitive thing. Uh, guys want glory. Everyone wants to be the hero. You know what I'm saying? And it's physically demanding. And there are things that translate from baseball, like I said, competitiveness, uh, willingness to be the best that you can for someone else or for a group of guys, more specifically. You know, uh, yeah, I mean, we're only on this earth for a short amount of time, right? So we can only do so much within that time frame. In sports, like I said, it's only a third of that. If that, if you're lucky. So I think, like I said, sports is something that we do temporarily, but it isn't who we are. We shouldn't let our sport or the thing that we do define us, because we're people at the end of the day. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, we can't play a sport our entire lives and live off of it. And because I mean, eventually it'll affect us in a bad way.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, it's what we do. It's not who we are. We're people. We live normal lives. Um, no one's gonna walk past you in the street and say, "Hey, you're that baseball player. Hey, you're that football player." No, if it's somebody new that doesn't know you, they're gonna acknowledge you as a human being. How good you are. You know, uh, how good of a heart you have. You know, um, how nice of a person you are. Those are qualities that stick with us forever. And baseball isn't one of them. Sports isn't one of them. You know.
So fast forward, you already kind of touched on the firefighter. So how do you feel? You kind of already touched on it. What really made you get into being a firefighter? Was it sports? What kind of really got you into being a firefighter?
Uh, well, back when I was at Bishop State not too long ago, I was going to church every Wednesday. They had like a teen church night or whatever, and I met this guy. His name's Austin, and he was a fireman, and he was also a former athlete, and he just encouraged me uh to do it. If baseball was something that uh I no longer wanted to do, if there was anything, catastrophic that happened to where I couldn't play anymore, firefighting is one of the best jobs to have in the world. And he told me to pray on it, and I did day and night. I knew that baseball wouldn't be with me forever. I know I could only go so far with the skill set and the talent that I had. And after I played at Tuskegee, man, I felt like I had a pretty good season to end on. I felt like I gave it essentially everything that I had.
Yeah.
Uh, like I said, I was blessed enough to receive an award, and that's a pretty big accomplishment. It wasn't MVP or best GPA or anything like that, but it was still most valuable teammate, and extremely grateful for that. So I was content with where I was, and I was comfortable with leaving the game. And like I said, I just took that philosophy of it's what I do, not who I am, with me. And I wanted to stay active. I wanted to do something that was physically challenging, mentally challenging, but also something that could serve others. Something that I could be proud of, say that I was doing. I don't do it for glory or, I don't do it for recognition or anything like that. I do it because I have a good heart and I care about other people. I care about other people's well-being, and uh, if someone can't help themselves, if I've been given the gift by God to, have an athletic background, then I should use it for something. I should use it not for my own benefit, but for the benefit of others. And so I felt like it was the perfect career for me. Uh, like I said, it's one of the best jobs in the world to have. It's almost like a fraternity. You're living a third of your life with guys that you've never known. But I mean, you can imagine spending 24 hours with the same group of guys every 3 days. You've got no choice but to get closer with them. Uh, so yeah, that's exactly the position that I'm in, and I'm extremely grateful and honored to be able to do what I do. Um, Ultimately, I just wanted to stay active, serve others, and at the same time, I mean, I'm just keep it real with you. I got tired of being a broke college student as well. So I wanted to also make a little bit extra money as well. Um, so that, whenever I went back for my senior year of college, which I plan to do next year, I can have a little change in my pocket to do whatever I wanted. And so yeah, just wanted to stay active and serve others. I feel like that's one of the many purposes that I have on this earth right now.
100%. That's what it's all about, man.
It's awesome, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
It's great.
I think we've had a great podcast so far. I kind of want to always leave it up on this note. I always ask my athletes, former athletes that I have on here, if a young kid from your city was to, watch this podcast, hear all the insights, the valuable insights that you gave, what kind of advice would you give them to reach the levels that you reach? Not even just in baseball, just in life. What advice would you give to them?
It's a great question, Harry. I would say to stay committed and not let anyone's opinion define who you are. Everyone's got opinions, everyone thinks differently about different people, about different subjects. Stay true to who you are, be proud of the person that you look and see in the mirror every single day. I mean, when the going gets tough, which I mean, life it's one big mountain climb. We never quite stop and just take a minute and say, okay, this is it. I'm done. Life is a ladder, that we continuously have to climb, whether it's with sports, whether it's with our job, relationships, marriage, whether it's with our religion and our faith. It's always something that life is just find something that you're good at and stick with it, and that's with every single aspect. You know what I'm saying? Be the best that you can absolutely be at everything. Don't sell yourself short. Uh, yeah, just if you found something that you truly love doing, then stick with it and hold on to it, man. Like a pit bull is holding on to its bone. That's what my dad always told me. So if you really love doing it and you know for a fact that it's your God-given purpose, stick with it and don't let anyone's opinion or thoughts on you define who you are. You know, be you. And always keep the pedals rolling. You know, continue to be the best that you can be with anything. You know, constant progression, man. That's what I strive for. That's my motto. Uh, you know, the train on the train tracks never quite stops rolling with me, man. So yeah, man, just find something that you love and hit the ground running, man. That's all I can say.
100%.
Appreciate you, my brother, for coming on.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate it, man. Thank you for your time.
Um, as happy to have you, and you're always welcome back.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on, man. You know, we'll stay in touch, man. You know, see how you doing, man.
Yes, sir. All right, Harry, man. You be safe, bro. Stay out of trouble, though.
For sure.
Love you, man.
Love, man. For sure, man. All right, bro.
All right, buddy.
All right.